Hello, welcome back to Scriptural Analysis, the Law of the Covenant. This is Video 3, Part 3, the Abrahamic Covenant. The purpose of this video is to identify 3 lessons surrounding the covenant God made with Abraham. The example the authors have provided concerning the events surrounding the covenant God made with Abraham are distinctive because they teach us 3 very important lessons. First, it is possible for all individuals to make the choice to rise above whatever they are faced with, to find and to live within the covenant terms that God has established. This can happen no matter what circumstances they are born into. All individuals can change the cumulative effects of inherited cultural, traditional, and or dysfunctional mechanisms existing within the family they were born or brought into. No matter how far back these mechanisms go within the generations of their family, or even what circumstances they entail. Abraham's life is a perfect example of that, and will be discussed in Video 3, Part 5. Second, God reaffirms that He only interacts with women and men through a covenant relationship. This is an important distinction that is maintained by every author as they recorded their chosen history within the timeline of the Bible. These authors' approximated life centuries are as follows: 4000 BC, Adam and Eve. 2000 BC, Abraham. 1900 BC, Isaac. 1800 BC, Jacob. 1700 BC, Joseph. 1500 BC, Moses. 1400 BC, Joshua. 1100 BC, Samuel, King Saul. 1000 BC, King David and King Solomon. 900 BC, Elijah. 800 BC, Elisha. 700 BC, Isaiah. 600 BC, Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel. 400 BC, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Malachi. 0 to 100 AD, the writers of the New Testament. Each of the above individuals, and many more not yet listed, understood the promises made to Abraham and how those promises related to them at that time and to the entire world population from the beginning through to the described end times. And they understood the sacred nature of divine to human covenants. They knew this sacred nature had nothing to do with mankind. It is only God's participation that makes it sacred, and more specifically, it is because any woman or man entering into this type of covenant can do so with absolute certainty because God is the creator of the covenant, and as such, cannot break His promise. So as long as individual women and men choose to participate in the covenant and abide by its terms, God is bound to provide the required promise to them, or He would cease to be God. There can be no greater guarantee of protection. However, when women and men do not live these terms, for whatever reason, and they can range from having never heard of them, to being deceived by something similar, to plain old outright choice to live outside of the terms, there can be no covenantal promise that God is bound to. Such are the terms of the law. Therefore, One of the purposes of the author's writings is to reiterate this covenant guarantee over and over again throughout the histories they provide, as an example to all the world of how God deals with mankind. Their writings, as contained within the King James Version of the Holy Bible, are a testimony of Jehovah administering a blessing, protection, or a cursing, non-protection, in accordance to the law of the covenant in effect at that particular time. This way, all people can have the opportunity to understand how important it is to choose wisely during their lives and locate God's authorized servant. As such, these histories serve as a warning to future generations to be wary of making similar errors. Now, I would be remiss if I did not add that God's governance does include this same opportunity for all men and women who, for various reasons, did not find the authorized administrators of the covenant during their time on this earth. But that we will cover in the second video series, God's Perfect Plan. This first video series will deal strictly with God's law of the covenant. The third lesson that is important to understand about the covenant God gave to Abraham is that any individual who decides to pattern their life after Abraham in regards to his loyalty to God and finding his authorized servant here on the earth for the purpose of obtaining entrance into God's law, can enter into the law of the covenant and through obedience obtain the status of God's chosen people. Abraham sought out Melchizedek, God's authorized servant at the time, to receive the necessary ordinance required for entering the covenant. Why Melchizedek? Melchizedek is thought to be Seth, Noah's son, a covenant survivor of the flood. It is often forgotten by the reader that this family, saved by God's covenant through divine protection, was still around. According to the author's timeline, Noah actually outlived Abraham, while Melchizedek and his followers raised themselves to a level where they were taken from the earth, as the written history relates their city of Salem, which would later become Jerusalem, no longer there, similar to the pre-flood city of Enoch. The term God's chosen people is not for any distinct race or geographical people on this earth. It is a distinction offered to all individuals that are willing to abide by God's terms, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what time period they have lived in. It is completely incorrect to favor or give honorable distinction to any group abiding the covenant on this earth over any other group abiding the covenant, either past or present, as God is no respecter of persons, and will provide the promise given to Abraham upon all who desire to earn them. As such, there can be only two differing groups of people on this earth: those that abide the covenant because they had a desire and searched for it, found the group authorized to administer it by following the author's instructions left in their writings, chose to learn of it, abide its terms and enter into it once discovered, and do what covenant terms require of them from that point forward, and those that do not abide the covenant. And there are multiple reasons that can allow for people being identified into both categories, and God's perfect plan accommodates every one of them. But it is not a competition, nor is it an opportunity to generate a career. It is an individual choice that is not affected by the actions of another. You are the master of your choice and intent, and make it based upon your perception of what you think is important. When it comes to God's law, you and you alone will stand responsible for what you decide to learn and do during your life. there can be no responsibility assigned to anyone but yourself. For according to the authors, you will stand alone with the Creator when the time comes for you to recall your actions and choices lived while on this earth. Just you, Him, and God's law as the benchmark of your success. As such, it becomes a perfect test of personal accountability. The Abrahamic covenant allows for mankind to achieve from God a promised land, an enduring posterity, and a divine protection, both temporally and eternally, for them and their families. And these promises provide the incentive for all mankind to live under the terms of God's law during this life. In the next video, I will begin to identify why. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to you joining me for Video 3, Part 4, where I continue with the teachings from the writings about what we can learn from the author's history of Abraham and the magnitude of the covenant received from Jehovah. Until next time, take care and contemplate these things.